Welcome to How to Belong, the podcast that delves into the human quest to find a sense of belonging in what can often feel like a lonely world. Join us as we talk to guests who've navigated their own unique paths, what we like to call their hero journeys, from feeling like they don't fit in, to the profound realisation that true belonging can only ever be found from within. I'm Naomi E. Lloyd, and this is the How to Belong podcast. Hello, and today we're joined by Simon Houghton, a business consultant and a really passionate advocate for deaf awareness. Simon's journey from navigating childhood with hearing aids to becoming a voice for inclusivity through his initiative Unseen Aware is a testament to resilience and the universal quest for acceptance. I am so excited about chatting to Simon because we clicked as soon as we met, and I was immediately drawn to his passion for helping people find their belonging, which is what this podcast is all about, this journey. So I know it's going to be a real game changer. No pressure there, Simon. He's looking at me right now. But let's dive in. Simon, welcome to How to Belong.
Thank you very much. Really pleased to be here.
I'm so pleased to meet you. Right, so let's get straight to it, why there's a connection between you and I immediately. So you and I share a similar experience with sensory neural hearing loss. Mm-hmm. Although I will say our origin stories are different here because anybody who's heard the first episode of How to Belong, I explained that my hearing loss is a genetic one. So if you haven't, I won't go on about that. I've already told my story. Anybody can go back to episode 1 if you want to hear about that. Yeah. It's about Simon today. Because Simon, your hearing loss came about due to premature birth. Is that right?
Yeah.
Would you mind just sort of like from going back to the beginning then and sort of talking us through your experience as a child growing up wearing hearing aids? But we're similar age, aren't we? So
I think you're younger.
A little bit. Only a little bit younger. But, you know, we're going to say we were born in the 70s and children in the 80s. So just to put that into context. So, I'll over to you, Simon. Yeah. What's your experience?
So I was born prematurely in the early 70s. Aging me now, but so it wasn't diagnosed until I was 4.5. So I was born in Tunbridge Wells, but I lived in Scotland. And we moved there when I was 4. And at 4.5, for some reason, I can't really remember why, but I had a preschool hearing test. And my mum always knew there was something not quite right, so she would call me from another room, and I wouldn't come in or I wouldn't turn around when she was talking. And at 4.5. For some reason, I've never really asked her why I had it, but there was a reason. I had a preschool hearing test, which was a table with a whole load of objects on it. Yeah. And there was a lady opposite, and I was sat next to my mum, and the woman put her hand over her mouth, to cover her mouth, and she said, "Pick up the ball, pick up the cup." And I turned around to my mum and I said, "How does she expect me to hear her if she's got her hand in front of her mouth?"
Very
and then
perceptive.
all of the professionals that were observing, like, all the alarm went off, and I was whisked away to an audiology unit and have to pretend I was in the RAF and a fighter pilot. And every time I heard a noise, I had to press the button, and that proceeded throughout my school years. With every 6 months and every year, eventually, I was given NHS's finest behind the ear hearing aids from 5 years old. So I started school with hearing aids.
Good. Did you get one hearing aid or two? Because
I had two.
I was only given one, and to this day I don't know why. Why did I only get one? It's very odd. Like why? Yeah. Why was I only given one in one ear? I just wondered whether maybe it was a Yorkshire thing. You're only getting one.
They weren't enough to go around. So you can have one, but the other one's down the other streets.
Yeah.
You can borrow it when you can.
Got to move down south.
So I was given two. I have my right ear is my I call it my dominant ear. I can hear a little bit more than that. I can hear about 20% in my left ear, 30% in my right ear. So my right ear is my strongest ear. So I've had hearing aids all that time. And I tell the story that there was verbal bullying at school because no one else has ever seen anything like this. These things behind your ears. And I said I was born in Tunbridge Wells. We moved to Scotland when I was 8, so 4 years in Scotland. Then I moved to East Sussex, We were there for 2 years. Then we moved to Southport, which is in the northwest between Liverpool and Preston. And I've been to a number of schools there as well. So I was the kid who was brought in front of 30 children at probably, 9:30 in the morning, middle of the week, middle of the term, and being introduced to my new class. And these kids go, what has that guy got behind his ears? And so there was a bit of low-level bullying, and there was two things I did. One was humour. So I used to say, hi, my name's Simon, but you can call me Cloth Ears. That was my nickname I gave myself. And if that didn't work, if the humour didn't work, I also did martial arts. So between the two, eventually they subsided. But I never met anyone who was deaf until I was 17. So I thought I was the only person in the world who wore these stupid hearing aids. I had no idea why I was wearing them. And so it was really weird. And I went to college. And they went, there's 3 people who are deaf, so we better put them together. And I was introduced to these 2 girls, lovely ladies, who they were doing foundation art, and I was doing computers. So we had nothing in common whatsoever. And they signed, and their speech wasn't great, so I could lip read them, but my friends couldn't really understand them very well. So I was a go-between, and they taught me some swear words and the alphabet. And that was about as much. But that was the first time I'd ever had any interaction with someone who was deaf. Then when I went to college, I went to university, and I had some difficulties early on because I had a radio aid. So at that point I was wearing a radio aid. For people who are listening, basically a radio aid is where I'll wear something. It's like a little box with a strap around my neck. And the teacher or the lecturer would also wear one. So when they walk around, the sound is transmitted by radio aid to this box and into my hearing aid.
Yeah,
and it was a crystal clear sound, but I still lip read. So the lecturer would be walking around the room, there's 120 people on my course, and then people behind me or in front of me would be asking questions, and then I wouldn't hear I would hear what the answer was, but not the question.
Oh, I relate to this so much.
And then there's all these sort of you're hearing bits, and every now and then you go, that's quite important. So you'd write it down on your book. But then because I'm no longer lip reading, because I'm looking at my book, I'd miss the next bit. So my notes were like 2 or 3 lines long in a 2-hour lecture. That's all it was. So it would be far better just to observe and lip read that the lecturer. But then I really struggled in I think it was the first term or first semester or first year. I can't exactly remember. It was such a long time ago. But that's what happened. And then they managed to get a disability grant. So either in my second year or halfway through my first year, I can't remember. And this was someone, to tell you what happened was I had a note taker. And this was, in my case, exclusively mums of children who were profoundly deaf and who signed. And so the parents learned to sign so they could communicate with their children. And that led them to be doing interpreting in conferences and that stuff. But they also did note-taking. And note-taking is literally whatever they hear, they write it down. And they came away, and the rule was I had to be in the room. I could be hungover, but I had to be in the room. As long as I was in the room, they would sit and they'd write the notes. And they would come away with 18, 20 pages of A4 paper compared to my 2 or 3 lines in a lecture. And so I could just sit and watch a lecturer, not have to worry about making notes. And it was great. And I would take the notes home, I'd type them up, and I actually made a bit of money because I used to sell my notes to my fellow students
brilliant.
as I got closer to exam time. So that all worked out well, and I got a first-class degree at university, and I went on and did a master's.
Wow.
Again, having note-taking. So that was critical. That was my adjustment.
That was your. Do you know? I'm just fascinated hearing this, and if anybody's listening who went to university with me and remembers this, so I probably went just a few years, not many, a few years after you. I went to Warwick University. I was studying for law, so very, very detailed, intense lectures. And when I got there, similarly, I'd marked down that I had this hearing loss, and I was offered either a note taker or various sign language, and I remember people around me going, "Get the note taker, fantastic! We don't have to go." And I'm going, "But hold on, I'll have to go." But I turned still above. I'm wondering now. I got a 2-1. I did not get a first, so maybe that was a big mistake of mine. I turned down the note taker because in my head I thought, well, I've done well in my A levels without having a note taker. It worried me that if somebody was next to me, I wouldn't take it in by not writing it down.
Right.
I mean, we all are hearing loss and how we, they are, and I also relate to this of that experience of not knowing where on the big spectrum of all these different experiences with deafness or hearing loss you are, and it's hard to find somebody exactly like you.
Yeah.
So, and I was, I don't know, very not rebellious, but I was sort of stamping my feet a little bit and thinking, well, there still isn't something that's going to work for me. What I wanted was really top-notch hearing aid that to me that would be the answer. So I went on at university. I went on this big campaign to find out how much the grant was worth, which I found out was worth £10,000.
Wow.
So then I contacted a private hearing company, and they were rubbing their hands with glee because I was saying, well, if this is what I need really good hearing aids. For my hearing loss, that's what I need, and the way I will learn. So it took a while, but I got them.
Very good.
Apparently, I don't know, but I don't know if it helped anybody else. I probably should have, now you'd have gone on Twitter and Instagram to sort of say anybody else in the same situation.
Deaf awareness
I was kind of
in those days.
I was trying to do it. I said because there will be somebody like me where, for my hearing loss and the way that I deal with it, that would be... And I did go to my lectures, okay, so just gone off script, but that was quite fun. But, maybe the note taker was, was something, it was a missed opportunity. You never know. Anyway.
But there's one thing on that, and I think it's still prevalent today, just as much as it was for me growing up. There's all this stuff that you can access through the council, but they never told you. So you had to find out.
Yes.
So I got a free bus pass, right? So I could travel from one end of the country to the other on my free bus passes.
Again, I never did that.
Because you probably didn't know.
Well, I say I didn't know, but I think I'm quite a stubborn person, and I'm... I don't know. Well, but one of the first jobs I had coming out of university, I worked for the National Deaf Children's Society.
Right.
And working on some of the Millennium projects they did at the time. And I remember my boss was profoundly deaf and a sign language user. So again, it was interesting because we were having different experiences of it. And I remember having a sense of guilt about that and I can't really explain why, but I did. Because and I remember them telling me, you could get a train pass and a bus pass. And I didn't feel like it was justified for me. I can't explain why. I just felt, well, I'm not a sign language user, so I shouldn't be. And
I think it's something to do with it's. I can definitely relate to that as well. I mean, I was all for the free bus pass, so I would have got that. I would have gone for that, whether I was deaf or not. But I can relate to this feeling, and it's within the context of this podcast, this belonging. How deaf do you feel?
Yes.
And I don't sign. I'm not profoundly deaf. I'm not this. I'm not that.
Yeah.
I've got a bit of a problem with my hearing.
Yeah.
I'm not really deaf, am I?
Yeah.
How disabled am I?
I'm not disabled. I'm disabled.
Yeah, and it gives you that. It does give you this sense of kind of, I don't know, just sort of
confused identity.
Yeah, inadequacy. Not sort of, I don't belong.
I don't belong to that group, and I don't belong to that.
Yes.
Oh, it's exactly how I've always felt like that. I've always felt like, well, I don't belong either way. I'm in this sort of middle ground. I'm like Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. I don't know where that comes from.
Like I said, I didn't know anyone who was deaf until I was 17. So I didn't know. And I actually went to a school. I would have been about 13. I was a bit stubborn like you. I went to this school, very, very good school in the northwest of England. And I was in the top stream, and there was like 30 kids, and the sound was bouncing everywhere, and I just couldn't cope. And I didn't do very well in my exams against my peers, but actually across the 120 kids in the year, I did absolutely fine. But I was like, I'm not going back. And so we looked at a deaf school, which was in the town where I lived in Southport. And sadly, it's not there anymore. But I went there thinking that that's the answer. I'm 13 years old. I'm not coping. I need to go to a deaf school. And the lessons they showed me, so I walked in, and they were doing like woodwork. and I am absolutely useless when it comes to using my hands to do stuff like that.
Me too.
And I'm like, I've just done Latin, English literature, and it didn't seem to be, and it felt like I was not in that place either. So I didn't fit in your school where I'd come from, and I didn't fit in the school that was potentially where I was supposed to go, which was a deaf school. And I ended up going to a really, really small school. There was 13 in a year and 13 in a class, and 70 in the whole school it was. And I went there and I got that individual tuition. And I was like, I didn't want to be, but I was like the teacher's pet. I was always sat at the front. I wasn't ever allowed to sit at the back.
Oh, I love being the teacher's pet. That's the one thing that I did.
Oh, did you enjoy it? You milked it?
That's the bit I milked.
I did use it occasionally, because sometimes they say, Simon, where's your homework? And I'm like, oh, miss, sorry, I didn't hear you say you had to hand it in today. And then I'll just hand it in tomorrow. Okay.
I also really relate to the humour side of things. That, if in doubt, just become the class clown.
Yeah.
And I did that on sleepovers. When everybody was whispering and stuff, and so I was brilliant at Chinese whispers. Everybody wanted me in the Chinese whispers game because I'd come out with something absolutely ridiculous that I actually did think I'd heard or anything like that. And I do remember in a physics class, this is really naughty actually, but everybody was really bored, and the subject that day was sound.
Right.
And I think it was somebody else's idea, but I did go along with it. That if you squeeze your hearing aid in your hand, it makes a really high pitched sound.
Yeah.
So I think we did that, and he spent the whole lesson literally trying to find out where it was coming from. And it's weird. I'm very sorry to that teacher. I can't remember your name. It was, I guess it's strange, isn't it? Because it's a weird way of. I know I'm not alone talking to you. That you have these coping mechanisms, and you do things like this as a teenager, as a child, because you want to fit in, or you want to feel that you can turn this into something to your advantage. And there, maybe there are times when you can. And but that I really absolutely understand that I don't belong here, I don't belong there. There isn't anybody else like me. I mean, I do have a brother with a similar hearing loss, but I think very different characters, and we probably experienced it differently as well. And I was going to ask you about that because, I could always wear my hair long.
Yeah, of course.
And it's not as always. I mean, boys can wear their hair long, but not all boys do. And I wondered, for your experience, would you say it was more visible for you?
Well, for the listeners, I don't look like Dave Grohl or anything like that with great long locks.
I don't know. I could see it. I could see you pulling that look off. Yeah.
Oh no, I had a bit of a curly hair thing when I was in the 90s. But no, I've barely got any now. So yeah, it's interesting you say about that, because it goes back to this sense of not belonging, not being able to fit yourself in. But it's weird. I never actually. I had an experience when I was at school. So this is when I was in Crowborough in East Sussex. And I won't bore you with a long story, but basically I came home after PE and I couldn't find my hearing aids. So we went back to school in the morning. I said, I've lost my hearing aids. So they suspended the whole of the lessons for the whole school. And they went looking out in the fields and the classrooms, everything, looking for it. And we were out in the playground and I couldn't find it. We'll go back to our classroom. And as we went back into the classroom, somebody said, "What's that high-pitched whistling noise?" And then the teacher said, "Oh." And then it started going towards the noise and it getting closer and closer to my bag.
No.
And my hearing aid was at the bottom of the bag, and I had PE. And they made me stand up in front of the whole school at the assembly and apologise.
Oh, that's awful.
So I think...
That is awful.
Yeah, so I think with me, I've never actually... Not only have I never really belonged, I'm actually kind of going, I don't want to belong. Kind of like I've just done it myself. And my... we'll talk about my career and stuff in a minute, but with me, I did do rugby. Yeah. I played rugby at school, but then I switched to squash, which was a very individual sport. I played for county and I played for university until I did my back in, so I can't play anymore. But that was a very solitary kind of sport. And so I didn't really have that camaraderie of either on the field or in the classroom or wherever. So I was quite an individual person. But I think a lot of it was drawn by the experiences of being the only person in the room with. I mean, you just find the thing about comedy. When I had the radio aids, the headmaster would walk in, and then the teacher would leave the room, and I'd be telling her, "She's been fired." They all thought that she'd been fired by the headmaster, and I got lots of laughs like that.
Yeah.
But I never actually felt like I was part of a group. And I remember from very early age, I'm like, if people said, jump in the river, why would I do that? I wouldn't. I wasn't really part of a gang like that. Not gang as in knives or anything, but a gang as in people together. And so I was and I think it was formulated from the early days of being deaf.
It's interesting you talk about gangs and groups, because as I'm more and more thinking about this, partly in this journey that I'm on now, I've always had, growing up, I guess it was self-protection, but I always liked to have my person. I didn't really have groups.
Yeah.
But, I had a best friend. And, my best friend, one of my best friends at school, who sat next to me all the time, she would put my hand up for me. She would just lift my hand up and I'd go, what have you put my hand up for now? But I would rely on her. Yeah. And then when I went to a different school later, I found my person again. And I think it was survival. But I think even now, I do consider myself I like a party, I'm sociable, but I do like to have one-to-one.
Yeah.
And I don't know if my own company. I'm not that good with that. But I do.
One-to-one,
I like one-to-one, and I love the idea of groups. And I think it's become a real thing, isn't it, to be in a part of a group? Even women now in their 30s and 40s going on girly holidays and things like that.
Tupperware parties.
Yeah. Oh well, no. Come on, Simon. I was thinking more Ibiza. Yeah. but I can see it from afar. But there's something inside of me that's a bit nervous of it, I suppose. And I think it is learned behaviour or survival, and I don't think anything wrong with that.
I think you're right. I don't interrupt, but one-to-one. For those of you who lip read, if you're deaf, it's very hard to lip read when there's 8 people talking
really
at the same
hard.
time. So if it's 2 people, so I my best thing is one-on-one, one-on-two.
Yeah.
So if it's 3 people, there's only really one conversation going on. If it's 4, it could be 2 people having 2 separate conversations.
Same. Yeah.
So I'd rather a maximum of 3. And
what, you including you and 2 others?
Me and 2 others.
I'm the
That's
same.
ideal, or one-on-one.
Yeah.
When it starts to get 4, 5, 6, 7, I'll just sit back and I'm just trying to keep track of what's being said. I'm not actually able to contribute because it's just too many people flying in, putting their comments, and it's just like, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So again, if people think when I'm in a group, oh, he's not really very social, he's a bit shy, or he's an introvert. It's not really. It's that I'm trying to keep track. But I like my own company just as much as I like being with other people. But when I'm with other people, I like to have a smaller number of groups.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes if I might come across as a bit of a control freak, because I maybe, it's partly survival again, protection, but I agree with you. You've said exactly the same. To be honest, it's either a maximum of 3, that would be my ideal, or a big party, because at least then you can go around one or the other. The in-between is hard. And if we are it's going to be like 8 or 10 people at a table, I've finally got the confidence to be, all these years down the line, to finally say, I really need to sit in the middle.
Yeah.
If that's possible. And most people who know me do understand that. And a few people have judged, playing the death card, which is a little bit annoying to say the least, but actually, I think this really nicely leads us on to the workplace and belonging and our experiences. Well, particularly yours. So, it's 2024 when we're recording this, and we're not that long ago since we went through the COVID pandemic. And I know this is something that is created a particularly painful experience for you in the workplace, but directly related to mask wearing. And I'd love it if you don't mind to just explain to listeners what happened there, because I think it's a really important story.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a management consultant. So I travel all around the world, and then come 2020, or whenever it was, the beginning of the pandemic, all that travel stopped. And we had all those essential services, like doctors and nurses, pharmacy, opticians, supermarkets, and everyone else was all working from home. And in every single essential service, I had so many problems because I have to lip read and everyone wearing masks. And yes, they do have the plastic see-through mask. That came a bit later. That wasn't to start with. And I remember, I'm not an emotional person really. I remember breaking down in front of the nurse at our local GP surgery. So they called me in for I had a blood test, I think it was, and they had to go to the waiting room, which was upstairs, and I was the only one in the room. And then this woman in full PPE came in, a hazmat suit kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, are you waiting for somebody?" I said, "Yeah, appointment." And she said, "Oh, come with me." And I said, "Just to let you know, I'm deaf. I have to lip read." Anyway, I'm following her down the corridor, and she's chatting away, and I have no idea what she's saying. She's chatting away, and then we get into this room, and she sits down. She says, "I'll sit down there," and she's got her mask on, and she's saying all this stuff, and I'm like, "I can't hear you. I'm deaf. I can't hear you." And so she said, "Well, what are we going to do?" I said, "Well, could you not? I've got my mask on. Could you not take your mask off, explain what you're going to do, and then put the mask back on and do the blood test?"
Absolutely, yeah.
And she says, like, you could see the brain sort of working on. He goes, oh yeah, I could do that. And she took the mask off. So how are you? And I went, blah. So it was all these, because you're saying, and I'm sure you had the same thing, you're having to say the same thing to people over and over and over again. And the straw that broke the camel's back was an optician's. And went in for just a normal optician test. They had a mask on and a face shield.
Right. Yeah.
And she's asking all these questions. It's a green dot brighter than the red dot and all this. And I must have said about 12 or 14 times, I said, "Look, I'm really sorry, I'm deaf. I can't hear you. I have to lip read." And she just carried on. She had no concept of what I was talking about. So, and every time I was saying it, my frustration level was building and building and building. And at the very end, she said, "Floaters? Come back to the opticians." Something else I didn't hear.
Yeah.
Go straight to A&E. I'm like, "What? What do you mean A&E? Where does that come from? I'm here for an optician." So I was so frustrated at that point. I was angry, and I can't, let's just see if she could tell my wife. My wife was outside. So we went outside. She told my wife. We chose some glasses. We left. And then I think we were driving back or we were walking home. I can't remember where we were. And I said, "By the way, Jem, what was it that the optician said?" And she said, "Oh, if you have a detached retina."
Oh.
And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I've got a few questions."
Yeah.
Why did you say it? What are the symptoms? When's it going to happen? Is it one eye or both? All these questions.
Yeah.
And of course, we were halfway to home. We couldn't do that now. So I was really frustrated that I felt completely excluded at that point. And then to jump 2 weeks later, my wife, who works for the NHS, she's like on call for cardiac arrest. So she couldn't come with me. So I had to go on my own. I was very brave, 47 and a half.
You were.
Go to the opticians to pick up my glasses. And I'm like, how am I going to stop this from happening again? So I had a cloth mask, not the throwaway one, but the one you could wash. I had one of those, a grey one. And I wrote deaf down one side and lip read down the other.
Oh, brilliant. Good idea.
And then I walked into do you remember when we had the COVID stations before you actually got into the shop?
Yeah, you have to stop.
You clean your hands and sign in. So I got to the COVID station, and before I said anything, she didn't say a word. This lady on the other side she took a step back, she pulled her mask down, and she said, "How can I help?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness, that's the first time anyone had paid any attention to my needs as a deaf person." And in the same breath, it's a double-edged sword. No one knew that I was deaf because you're wearing a mask or, you don't wear your hearing aids or whatever it is. But by putting that visual cue actually, she's, oh, okay. We had a chat about it. She thought it was really useful. I wrote about it on LinkedIn, got a couple of 100,000 views, and lots of people saying, oh, I didn't realise deaf people were struggling with the masks. And I'm like, well,
Yes.
it's simple for me to understand, but maybe not for everyone else. It was common sense. And so I said, oh, does anybody want to know more about what it's like being deaf? And, I'm not qualified in any shape or form.
You're qualified in experience.
I've got 50 years.
That's important.
Given my age away there, 50 years experience. And I did this thing an hour on Zoom. We had like 70 people turned up.
Excellent.
And they were like, oh, this is amazing. I had no idea on all these challenges that you have and how you overcome them. And to cut a long story short, that's what kicked off this campaign. We called it, I'm not a marketeer, I should have spoken to you beforehand, but we support deaf awareness was all I can come up with. We support deaf awareness. And the idea was to help organisations and their staff to better communicate with someone who was deaf or hard of hearing, not to teach them BSL or anything like that. But, a lot of people think if you're deaf, then you sign. And that's not actually the case.
I don't know if this is your experience, but I find that people start speaking to you in a which actually is incredibly useless if you're trying to lip read, because now you've just changed the shape of your movement.
People don't realise
No, they don't realise it. And I guess it is about education and stuff like that. And I everything you're saying is resonates completely. Sure. And it's true. It's true. You hold back from saying it because you know that there's a high chance that somebody will start speaking to you like that, or trying to sign at you or something. Yeah.
So I did that, and we launched it on, I'll never forget, we launched it on the 12th of April 2021, and that was the first day that we were kind of allowed out. So we can go back to the shops. The shops have been shut all that time, and now all of a sudden they're available. And we launched it in the Oracle Centre in Reading, which was, because there was 150 retailers or something, it's like, you'd have to go in, if you go into the shop, you go to 10 shops, you'd have to have the same conversation. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm deaf, I have to lip read, you've got a mask on. Oh, well, I can't take my mask off. No, you can if you're separated and you step back or go behind that Perspex screen next to you. And then they'll go, oh, yeah, okay. And you just have to say that every single time. So the idea with the training was, or the campaign was to teach people some basic behaviours. Don't put your hand in front of your mouth. Make sure you're looking at the person when you're talking. Try not to put something in your mouth like a cup or a pen or something like that. They might not lip read, but if you're blocking your mouth with something, it's going to stop the sound from travelling anyway. And so we did all that. And we're up to, we've got over 410,000 employees of a variety of different organisations who've got access to the training. We've got almost 30 NHS trusts. We've got a 4-person massage parlour in Warrington. We've got a whole range of organisations. Yeah. We've got some FTSE 100 companies. We've got a lot of charities. It's been brilliant. So it's been really great. And actually, bring it back to this podcast, I think that's the first time I've ever felt, I don't know whether belonging is maybe is that too strong a word? I don't know. But it's the first time I've actually felt like there's been an identity.
I think it is belonging. Yeah, I think it is. I can see that when you're talking about it. And
people say, oh, I'm deaf. And you hear about different stories. And I heard loads of people who are deaf. And when that 12th of April came about, when we launched, a lot of people I was speaking to who are deaf were like, do you know what? I've lived with Amazon deliveries for a year. I don't want to go out because I don't want to have the hassle and the stress and the mental issue of having to tell people that I'm deaf and they don't understand or they don't believe me and all this. So that a lot of people who I spoke to in the deaf community, when the 12th of April came about, a lot of people are, I'm not going out, I'm staying. And it took them a while before actually. And then we had another. Do we have another lockdown? We probably did.
Yeah, we did.
So definitely identity and hearing different stories from people and being able to show this kind of kaleidoscope of experiences. Just it's not binary. You're not either deaf or you're hearing. It's a huge
continuum. Can't put it in a box.
No, it's a huge continuum.
And everything you said is true to me, that there are people having similar experiences, and you are a little bit in this middle ground. And also there's always been a bit of a fear with me. I don't want to offend.
No.
I don't want to offend the deaf community or anybody actually, or anybody, but not knowing really where my community is. That's actually right. Really, my community has to be within me. Does that sound too cliche? I apologise, but partly because even the word community can, make me feel, I don't have a community. You know, where is it?
And I think I only really I think what it is, and it probably is belonging to a degree. I've just felt like I've met some really genuine people that I have something in common with.
Can I meet them too then?
You can meet them. I'd loads of them.
How needy do I sound right now? No, I'm joking.
But it's been really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And we'll talk about something else that I'm doing in a bit. But I've kind of taken that to another level because I've learned things around what we could have done differently and better with the We Support Deaf Awareness campaign. I'm excited for that. But if I look back on my career, you know, I was we've gone to 2021, if you like, or 2020 with the pandemic. But prior to that, I've been a management consultant with a very a global, then there was a big four consultancy, a big one, and I got thrown off a project because I misheard an action. And you talked about whether lots of people, whether you can see them and you can hear people. But it was a boardroom style, about 25 people on this project in Glasgow. And I was a team lead and I could see the people in front of me. I wasn't in the middle of the room. But I could see the people opposite me, but I couldn't see everyone down the side. And it gave me an action. I wrote it down and a couple of days and executed on it. And a couple of days later, the program director for the consultancy put me to one side. It was like 8 o'clock on a Wednesday evening. It always is, 90-hour weeks. And he said, "Oh, you've messed up." I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Oh, you didn't do the action." I got my book out. I said, "Yeah, I did, look." And he goes, "That's not the right action." So I'd obviously misheard what was said. And I said, "What do you want to do to, how do we fix this?" And he said, "I want you off the project so you can fly back to London tomorrow morning." And I was angry because there were so many different ways you could, should we get a note taker?
Yeah.
What would you like, Simon?
Yeah.
None of that. So that was frustrating. But that was in 2000.
But humiliating as well.
Yeah, it was. Because, when you join these big consultancies, every graduate that joins, especially in the management consultancy, like, I want to be a partner by the time I'm 30. Right? And you're like 23. And that's all you think about. And then you're like, that's been taken away from me. And that was in 2000. And I definitely had a sense of imposter syndrome. And my imposter syndrome stems from the fact that I feel that my deafness stops me from achieving or being to complete the circle of what it is I'm doing, because I'm always only hearing half. I don't know what the name of the person is. I don't know what time the meeting is. I didn't hear the action, those kind of things. And they just all add up. And so you just think, I'm not really able to do my job properly because of of this lack of my ears, as it were.
Yeah, sure.
So that happened. And then when would it be? So we're in, what month are we in? July. January last year.
The weather's confusing us, Simon.
It's
That's
raining.
why we don't know what
it feels
what
like
day,
it's December,
what
doesn't
season
it?
we're in. Yeah.
So it was January last year. I had to leave a project. I really enjoyed it, but I had to leave the project. I was an independent. I've been independent since 2012. And I was on a big project for a very well-known company, and the program manager was a contractor as well. We met with the CIO, Chief Information Officer for the organisation, and they were making some notes about the presentation that I'd hurriedly put together, and they were they said, "Oh, can we make this change? Can we make that change?" And I was writing them down, but as a result of writing them down, I wasn't lip reading the person, so I was missing stuff that they were saying. And so I sent a note to the program manager afterwards, and I just said, "Can we just have a little catch up? Just because I don't think I caught everything." And he just said, his exact words were, "It all made sense to me. Just go on and do it, and then send it back to me after you've done it, and I'll review it then." And I was thinking,
all makes sense to me. I mean, that's nice for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
So basically, it was like giving me a rope to hang myself. Because a couple of days later, when I was going to be doing this presentation, the CIO was going to go, well, why is that in there? I told him to take that out. Did that? It's useless. Just like what happened 20 years ago. So self-fulfilling. So, so I wasn't able to, I just felt it wasn't, I needed somebody to have a bit more empathy and understanding. I am pretty good at my job, but I do need some help occasionally. Yeah. So I decided throw myself into We Support Deaf Awareness. I've done some other work as well. Just We Support Deaf Awareness, and then Unseen Aware emerged after that.
Unseen Aware, sure. To tell us a little bit about that, if you can.
Sure, yeah. So Unseen Aware it's an extension from the deaf awareness. So it's not just about deafness, but it's basically, people will have heard about hidden or invisible disabilities or conditions like deafness, vision impairment, multiple sclerosis, lupus, all a range of different things, ADHD, autism. I'm calling it Unseen Aware because I think it's generally accepted that the word hidden and invisible have got a slightly negative connotation to them. So it's called Unseen Aware. And basically the difference between that and what we did with the deaf awareness is that you did the training, but there was no visual clue that you'd done the training. So in a shop, you'd walk in, there'd been a poster on the outside of the door. When you walked in, you'd never know the staff who've done it. So with Unseen Aware, they learned the principles of becoming an unseen disabilities ally. So respectful communication, challenging bias and stereotype, not making assumptions, those kind of things. Because there's too many hidden or invisible or unseen disabilities. You can't really do that in a couple of hours. But you get a badge that says, I understand unseen disabilities. And so you walk into the shop or into the office or into a doctor's surgery or an A&E department, and if someone's got a badge on that says, I understand unseen disabilities, it means that, as a deaf person, I'm not going to go, I don't walk into the room and go, I'm deaf. I don't do that. But I'll talk to them rather than somebody who hasn't got a badge. Right. And then if they're mumbling, if they've got their hand in front of their mouth, then I'll probably say, oh, by the way, I've got an unseen disability. And then that'll prick their ears up and go, oh, okay, yeah. What can I do? How can I communicate better with you? And all the things that they learn on the course. And it's a movement rather than a training course. And there's a commitment required by the organisation to let their staff know that they've joined and to use social media. And there's also a commitment on the individual when they do the course. At the beginning, they do the course about the principles. They then say, ask them, what can you do in the next 90 days to just push the needle a little bit toward disability awareness and advocacy? It might be to make sure my team do the course and get the badge, or I'm going to learn everything there is to do with fibromyalgia. I've heard about it. I don't know anything about it. I'm going to tell my team. And then what they also get, which you don't get with the deaf awareness, is every week you then get a snippet of a lived experience interview that I've done with a variety of, I've done about 12 so far, a range of different unseen disabilities and conditions. And then we've broken them down into 5-minute chunks. So, you might not have the time to watch a 1 hour thing, but 5 minutes every week. So,
it's doable, yeah. It's doable. Such a good idea.
A different condition each week, a different question. So it keeps it quite fresh. And hopefully that means that they'll still be thinking about unseen disabilities when they're wearing their badge, when they're at work. And so we're launching that in a retail centre. September the 2nd is the day that it goes out. And then we've got some talks with some big organisations and some government bodies as well. And so, it's early days, but it's really exciting.
It's fantastic. I'm so excited for you, and I definitely want to hear more. And I hope anybody listening to this episode, I hope it's something that you might want to look into as well.
Yeah.
And also I'd say not just the bigger organisations, the small ones as well. There's lots of people working in really small groups. And actually that can be quite... I work in a small company. I'm not anything there, but it there's not the same infrastructure set up, but it doesn't mean that the individuals are just as important within that structure. So that's just something I wanted to add in. we're about to get to the close, but I don't want to because I'm loving the conversation. But I'm just wondering, talking to you now, that you think you've connected with all sorts of people. Is there any, knowing what you do about this podcast, I'd love to know from you. I'm still in the first season. Is there anybody you can think of that you think would be a really great person for me to like interview?
Yeah.
In a dream, it can be big. It can,
Well, there's two that's been to mind.
Oh, right, okay.
One a bit more local here, but I think Jodie usually would be amazing. She's currently probably in Paris at the moment doing she's going to be doing the Paralympics commentary for Channel 4. I'm big on, I worked as a sports psychologist with rugby, so I'm really into my rugby. And
because Jodie's in England.
That's right, England rugby player, and she was also in Gladiators as well.
Fury, that's right.
For those of you who
and she was also a pupil of the Elizabeth Foundation,
which is just round the corner.
Which is just round the corner where my eldest child attended, and where we recorded the first episode of this podcast. And I absolutely love the Elizabeth Foundation, and I know that she's one of their patrons. Oh yes,
so that'd be really good.
That's got to be on my dream list, hasn't it, Jodie?
It'd be brilliant to hear what she said about how she's been dealing with the pressures of high performing. And that would be really
and
good.
A cochlear implant wearer.
Yes,
so
of course.
That would be really interesting because obviously we wear hearing aids, but I would love to. I'm fascinated by that. And Jodie's also from Yorkshire as well, so that's interesting
We've
to me.
got a lot in common.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're putting that one out into the universe in a very cheeky way. Anybody else?
Yeah, the other person I was thinking was he's a local guy.
Oh, great.
And I think Duke Harrison Hunter. If he's listening to this, he's like, oh my God, I haven't spoken to him about this, but I think Duke would he has an amazing story. And I think from a point of belonging, I think that would be a really good conversation.
Oh, another one to put out on you. Okay, well, let's see what happens. I love this. Simon, thank you. I feel like I've had a major therapy session here that I wish I'd had years ago. I think it's been really helpful, and I hope listeners have found it interesting. I'm sure they have, because what a story. And what insights and what incredible things that you're doing and putting out there for so many people. So thank you. And thank you to everybody listening, joining us. I'm Naomi E. Lloyd, and this has been How to Belong.